Kimberly Lamiokai Addison, the co-founder of 57 Chocolate, is passionate about education, development, and the empowerment of youth in Africa. Previously, she worked in international organizations and non-profits focusing on women, education, and youth homelessness. Kimberly fell in love with the possibility of making chocolate when she went to a factory tour in Switzerland. Disheartened by Ghana's lack of value addition to cocoa, Kimberly took up the challenge of learning to make chocolate right at home. She founded 57 Chocolate, a company that empowers youth in Ghana to manufacture revolutionary bean-to-bar chocolate that celebrates African art and culture. In spite of living a global life, she has not forgotten her roots. She is also passionate about children, so aside chocolate, she has served in the Teshi Neighborhood Daycare Center, Accra, Ghana, as a teaching assistant, where she taught English and basic hygiene lessons to preschool children, coordinated activities for the kids, workbook assignments and outdoor playtime activities, and allocated resources to improve their facilities. She loves to read during her leisure and also learn new things. She is very open-minded and gives opportunities to everyone around her to explore and make suggestions to her. She also has experience in public speaking, hosts chocolate tasting, and engages her guests with exciting and memorable conversations. There is no dull moment with her.
Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us on Inspire. We spoke briefly before the interview and you are just amazing. There's so much to unpack, so I'd love to just get right into it and ask you, please tell me about your background and why you chose to transition into the chocolate business.
Okay, so I'm originally from Ghana, but I was born in the States. I grew up in Dakar, Senegal, and then went back to school in the States as well as lived in Geneva, Switzerland. And so having lived such an international life, I always knew that I wanted to eventually end up back in Africa. And that's because I stayed on the continent after moving at age 5 to Senegal. I stayed on the continent of Africa until age 15 before going back to the States. And, you know, going back to the States for the very first time, I got the biggest culture shock of my life to date. You know, that was many years ago. That was over almost like 20 years ago. But to date, my dad still makes fun of me of, you know, how I begged to go back to the continent. And so I always had this notion, you know, that I'm going to get my education in the States and then move back to Africa. I didn't know whether it would be Senegal or Ghana, but God eventually led me to Ghana. And that's where the story really begins. Before actually coming to Ghana, after graduating in 2012, I eventually moved back to Switzerland, which is where my parents were at the time. And I was working in women in education and development. I was very interested in the development sector. But being at a desk from 9 to 5 for 8 hours a day, I got very restless. And I began to speak to my dad, you know, telling him that I feel like I should be doing more than this. I feel like I should be creating. And my dad, being a Pan-Africanist, he told me, you know, when he retires, I should consider moving back to Ghana with him and starting a business. And, you know, that sounded amazing because, you know, I felt like I was stuck in an office, and being an entrepreneur felt very liberating. And I really don't think I really knew what an entrepreneur was at the time, but I knew I wanted to be doing something creative. And so I told my dad that, okay, when you retire, I'll plan on moving back to Ghana with you. And I really thought that was a 3 to 5 year plan. But it so happens that 3 months after our conversation, I came home from the gym. I didn't remove my shoes, didn't even put down my bag, and my dad was there waiting because he knew the time I would come home. I opened the door. He says to me 2 words, "Guess what?" And, you know, I'm tired, so I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I retired today. It looks like you're moving back to Ghana." And my dad is someone who always likes to see if people put their money where their mouth is.
Right.
So he was like, "You're going to resign, right?"
Right.
And I was like, yeah. But I was hesitant. But that week, so he spoke to me on a Monday. And that Friday, I handed in my letter of resignation. not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, which I don't advise to people at all. That just happened to be my journey. And, you know, I actually, when I knew that I would be moving back to Ghana and would be starting a business, I really began, you know, praying and asking God, give me a business idea, because I had no idea, like, what business am I coming back to Ghana to start? And so I would be jotting down ideas as they came, but nothing really, you know, stuck with me. And then 2 weeks to my flight to come back to Ghana, a group of friends of mine from church invite me to a chocolate factory as something fun to do before I leave. And it had always been on my bucket list, but I never got around to do it.
Wow.
And so I was on board. And I remember, you know, the first part of that factory tour, you see where they source all their ingredients from, the main ingredient being cocoa. And I remember just being shocked that the two major ingredients, like, you know, or the main ingredient was coming from two African countries, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. And so I had grown up eating so much chocolate, but I never once considered, where does chocolate come from?
Right.
How is it made? All I knew was, even when our family was moving to Switzerland at the time, that we were moving to the land of chocolate, the nation of chocolate. And so I remember just being completely shocked and just doing all my calculations in 1 minute and realizing that I have been a major part of a problem, because I was constantly, you know, traveling with Swiss chocolate. If I was going to the States, I had Swiss chocolate as gifts. If I was coming to Ghana, I had Swiss chocolate as gifts. And so it didn't make sense to me that Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire were growing the major ingredient, and yet when people in the world think of chocolate, it automatically goes to Switzerland first.
Right.
And so, you know, I remember, you know, taking a bean to remind me of what I wanted to do, and, you know, saying that this is something that I feel like I should change. And I went home, I spoke to my sister, I brought her a bean. I remember going to my parents and saying, did you guys know this? Why hasn't anybody told me that all the chocolate I've been eating is made from an ingredient on the continent?
Right.
And that really sparked, you know, the passion for chocolate.
I love that. I love that so much. You've said so much. I just want to unpack. You said at first when you went to the States, you got culture shock. Could you tell me what were some of the differences that you experienced when you got there?
So the first main experience, the number one culture shock that I first got was, I remember, you know, leaving Senegal, and, you know, when you take off from Senegal, you see the view of the ocean and the palm trees. And I was landing in New York, and all I could see was concrete buildings. And so I remember turning to my dad and saying, where are the trees? And he said, my dad, he's very funny. He looks at me and he goes, you don't know New York is the concrete jungle?
Right.
And I'm just dumbfounded. So that was a big thing for me, because I love trees, I love nature. So I couldn't fathom that, you know, there was only like Central Park, you know, for trees. Right. I wanted trees to be everywhere. So that was one shock. And then, you know, in Senegal and in, you know, Africa, the continent is very communal. There's a sense of community. And something that I was accustomed to doing in Senegal was, when I pass people on the street, you greet them and you wish them well. Yeah. And so here I was, a 15-year-old, walking on the streets of New York, hello to everybody who I'm passing, not getting responses back, but getting, you know, weird stares. And then I had to realize, okay, it's not done here. It's not the same. And then, you know, going on the subway for the first time, my dad decided it would be interesting to take me on the subway during the rat race, you know, when everybody's closing from work. And so I remember just standing there, because in a New York subway during rush hour, people are just walking zoom, 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 left and right, fast. Yeah. And so my dad was used to it, so he just went with the flow, and I had to stop. And my dad ended up leaving me. I was just processing, like, where are everybody rushing to? So when my dad realizes that I'm not by his side, he turns back to look for me. And I ask him, where is everybody going? Yeah. And he's like, this is the rush hour. This is the rat race.
Right.
So that was shocking to me. And then the very fact that, you know, I had stayed in Senegal for 10 years, you know, without ever going back to the States. I remember we were driving and seeing homeless white people on the street. I had never seen that growing up in Senegal. I had never seen a homeless or struggling or poor white person before. So that was a major shock to me, because my mindset was like, white people can't be poor.
Right.
But they can.
That's right. What were some of the challenges that you faced starting 57, especially being a woman in a male-dominated industry?
So, okay, that's very interesting. So some of the challenges, the interesting thing is, one thing I love about Ghana is you see a lot of women in business.
Yeah.
You see, like, you have the Makola woman, so you see a lot of women in business. But it's true, the chocolate industry, you know, I had to actually do an apprenticeship before, you know, coming to Ghana. So that was actually one of the, or before starting the business. So coming here, I had no background in chocolate making. And so I couldn't find a place to train me to make chocolate. And isn't that shocking? You're in Ghana, second largest producer of cocoa, and I can't find someone to teach me how to make chocolate.
Right. Yeah.
And so one of the ways I actually overcame that is I realized, I did my calculations, and I realized, okay, you know, Europe is known for its chocolate. I'm not sure if I'm going to go back to Switzerland or not, but I ended up emailing a whole bunch of chocolate makers in Europe. And I emailed probably around close to 99 chocolate makers, just sending emails. Hey, I'm a 25-year-old Ghanaian girl. I want to start a chocolate business. And I got, like, literally 99 no's.
Wow.
And I remember feeling so discouraged. And I was listening to a gospel song, which for the life of me, I can't even remember what gospel song it was, but I remember clearly the lyrics in that moment. And the lyrics were, God closes many doors to open that one door.
Nice.
And so in that moment, I told myself, I said, okay, God, you're closing all these doors to open that one door. And so literally the next day, I got an email from a couple in the Cotswolds, like a village, I think 3 hours outside of London.
Yeah. It's a water village.
Yeah. And they emailed me and they said, we would love to train you. We believe in what you're trying to do. All you have to do is get here. You can live with us. We'll house you. We'll feed you. And I remember telling, you know, people that I got it. I'm going. And a lot of people were like, this is too good to be true. What skeletons do they have in their closet? And I remember telling them that, no, this is God.
Amen.
So I'm going. And I went, and equally with that, I got an opportunity to also meet another chocolate maker in Switzerland. So I got training both in the UK and in Switzerland. And so that was one of the major challenges, you know, coming back in starting a business here.
Wow, wow, wow. And that's the result of faith.
Yes.
The type of faith that moves mountains.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing with me. We're just going to go for a short break. And when we're back, we're going to be diving into more of 57 with the lovely Kimberly. Welcome back from the break. You're watching Inspire, and I am your host, Monique Laws. I am sitting here with the wonderful founder of 57 Chocolate, Mrs. Kimberly N. Lamiokai Addison. So before the break, we were speaking about some of the challenges you faced when starting the business. Now I'd like to speak about some of your key achievements.
Okay, so I would say one of the key achievements is actually my team. I'm a big believer in the biggest investment you can make is in another person. And so none of my staff have had any previous experiences in, you know, making chocolate. But one thing that Priscilla and I, my sister, who I started the business with, and I believe is that if we could be trained, if we could learn, then we could also teach people. And so, having, people come in, maybe not good in public speaking, not knowing how to make chocolate, and seeing them grow to the point where, I remember we host chocolate tasting experiences.
Nice.
And I would tell my staff in the early stages that one day I'm not going to be the host. One day you guys are going to host. And a lot of them were like, how can we host? But now they're hosting. And to see their confidence level develop, to see, we have some staff who, maybe didn't get the chance to finish their education, came in, not necessarily knowing how to use a computer. Now seeing them, because they worked, with us at 57, seeing them develop those skills is the best achievement for me. Because for me, I believe that if you come in through our doors, we want you to stay very long. That's my hope, that people will stay long. But obviously people have different purposes and callings. So some people, this is a season for them. But my key thing is, if you come through our doors, you have to leave better than you came.
That's
and
right.
you have to go either somewhere of equal par as 57 or better. Or you should leave equipped to be able to start your own business that you want to do.
Nice.
And so I've seen people, leave, and I can look back and see where they started, and I can look back with them and say, and they themselves can say, I'm not the same person who is leaving. I've left better. I've left with more skills. I've left with more confidence. And so for me, that I love making great chocolate. I love making excellent chocolate, but it's really about the people.
I love that you said that, and it's so beautiful to see how your passion for education and empowering people marries the business. That's wonderful. Do you have any strategies or guided in building a brand that celebrates African art and culture?
Absolutely. So for me, the reason why we wanted to make 57 uniquely African is because, having lived such an international life, I always saw Africa portrayed negatively. The image of Africa, when I would be in the States and I would think of the image of Africa, I would see, the child with the extended belly and flies all over them. And that was some of the imagery that you see in Africa. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't exist, or, there's not hardship here or whatever. No.
Right.
But there's so much more.
Of course.
And there's hardship everywhere.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was really about changing the narrative and changing perceptions of what people think an African brand is. So when people would think of African brands, they would think, okay, it's probably going to be lesser quality. So one of the core strategies is excellence in everything we do. Like deliver excellence. And also educate. Educate is a major theme. Educate people through your branding. So one of the things that we do is, we feature on our packaging different African revolutionaries and heroes, such as the likes of Kwame Nkrumah.
Excellent.
And people can scan and learn more about that particular revolutionary. So it's really about building excellence. It's really about integrity. In business, you're not going to do everything right. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes, but do you have the integrity, to be honest and forthright that this is a mistake I've made, and I'm going to correct it, and this is how I'm going to correct it. So I think that's very important. And then on a more funner side, or more fun side, is also infusing fun parts or fun aspects of our culture into the brand. So for example, we have our Adinkra symbols on our chocolate, where people can learn about the Adinkra symbols. And it may also be in our flavors, right? So we have a Sobolo or Bisap flavor chocolate. So it's really taking the best parts of our culture and adding it and educating people on, that in Africa we can deliver excellence as well.
That's amazing. Okay, so what keeps you motivated when you're facing challenges and setbacks?
The number one thing that keeps me motivated is God. That's
Amen.
the number one motivator, because the way this business has come about, I know that I'm just the steward. So, with my team, they'll always hear me say, hey, I'm not the owner. I'm just the steward. I'm also employed by God.
I love that. Speak.
And so it's really God. And I believe that, I think it's always been more than chocolate. And I always tell people that chocolate is a means to an end. And I see it once again, the heartbeat of it is really the team. The people who are able to work here. If, through working at 57 Chocolate, God can speak to them, inspire them, equip them to be able to fill their own purposes, then, I've done my job.
That's amazing.
So, number one is God. And then equally, it's, those all connected to God, those, friends and family who are there to encourage you and motivate you when things are tough, because things aren't always rosy in business. But having that core why and knowing that, whatever God births, he will sustain.
Amen.
As we work with him.
That's right.
It's knowing that even through the challenges, it's working for good. And even in the challenges, there's something for us to learn.
I love that. And even just reflecting on what you said earlier about when you knew that you had to go to Ghana, you were asking God for ideas and you were writing them down.
Yeah.
That is Habakkuk 2:2. It's there, about writing the vision. So I think that I know that you're a living testimony of what God can do in our lives. When we were speaking before the interview, we were speaking about Ghanaians leaving to seek greener pastures. What message do you have for those from here leaving the country to seek greener pastures?
My big message is that the truth is I always get deeply, saddened to the point of, to the point of tears when I hear that, somebody is leaving to go, abroad for good, leaving Ghana behind. And, don't get me wrong, it could be that God has called them. If God has called you, then great. Then I can't, there's no fighting with God there.
That's right.
But if he has not, and you're just trying, if you think that it's just better in the West or better in the States, it really disheartens me, because I believe people haven't seen, past the surface level of sight what Ghana could be.
That's right.
They don't see the potential. And obviously everybody wants to, be in a nice space, be in a nice country. But that takes work. And that takes people. That takes people being intentional about building their communities. So my message to the young people is, don't go and seek greener pastures elsewhere. Create your green pastures here. Because, I always joke with my team and I say, Ghana is sweet, oh. Ghana is sweet. It's sweet.
So sweet.
It's very sweet. And I can say that as someone who has, lived abroad and lived here. And granted, I'm not saying that Ghana doesn't have its challenges. Everywhere has its challenges. But what I'm saying is build up your country so that you can enjoy it as much as you think you would enjoy somewhere else. And I'm not saying don't travel. It's good to travel. Go travel and see, what's working there and what is not working here. And the lessons you learn, why can't you bring it to your country and apply it here?
That's right, because the grass is green where you water it.
Exactly.
And what do you think it's going to take to spark that change?
What it's going to take to spark that change is a complete mindset shift. And I think that's where my love for education comes, because we have to start with our kids. We have to start with our kids because kids are the best learners. They are the best learners. And if we can train our kids to be patriotic, to instill in them a love for country, a respect for even their environment, that's what needs to happen. We need to begin to teach kids at a young age to be creative, to love reading, because reading helps boost your imagination. To even imagine, you know, today, and I mean, this is an issue worldwide. This isn't me, you know, saying technology is bad. Technology is good, but it's also how you use technology.
That's right.
But today, people are busy just, you know, scrolling on their phones. I remember being a kid and, you know, making stuff with boxes. You know, exercising the muscle of my mind. And today, we're not doing that with kids. We're not teaching kids to imagine. We're not teaching kids to be creative. We're not teaching kids to love your country, to want to do something, to even be entrepreneurial minded. That granted, I'm not saying we don't need our nurses and doctors and stuff like that, but one thing I realized since I moved here, when I interact with kids, I always like asking them, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? And the three things I get: nurse, lawyer, doctor.
Wow.
We need nurses, lawyers, and doctors. Don't get me wrong, we need those. But is that all we need in this country?
Right.
It's not. It's not. We need engineers. We need business people. We need, you know, we need people who will create, because when we go into grocery stores, we see the amount of things that are imported. We import toothpicks. We have bamboo. We import rice. The ground can grow rice. You know, so so we need to start training and educating our kids to be thinkers, problem solvers, and seeing themselves as solution builders.
Thank you so much. I love your fire and your passion, truly, truly, and your love for the country and your love to educate. I really pray that your team expands and you are able to spark the change. Do you have any final words for our viewers?
Absolutely. So one of the best pieces of advice that I've learned in starting this business, and I said it earlier, is the greatest investment you can make is in people. Don't take people for granted. Don't take the conversations or encounters with other people for granted. Even if it seems like, oh, he's just a security guard, oh, he's just an Uber driver. I talk to everybody.
That's right.
Because you never know who is carrying your solution. God is no respecter of persons.
Amen.
You never know who is carrying your solution. You never know who is an open door to something you need in your life. So invest in people.
Thank you so much. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I mean, there's like a million more questions I'd love to ask you, but thank you so much for coming down. And yeah, once again, all the best with your business. And I heard you have some chocolate for me.
I do.
Okay, I can't wait to get some. Thank you so much for watching Inspire with me, your host Monique Laws, and Kimberly N, Lamiokai Addison. I hope you have been edified and educated. Bye for now.